Mics are hot.
Ooh, it's go time on the mics. We have a drink back there?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Are we going right now?
Yep, that's
We're
right.
live. Oh, snaps! Here we go again. Welcome to episode number 942.
9,000.
And episode 9,000, the Kinetic Experience experiment on seeing how well we can gossip live in front of you guys.
That's horrible.
Yeah, we had a whole thing like yesterday.
We're talking about you and to you.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly just about you. We're laughing with you. I'm just joking. Hi, this is Abe Nadimi.
I'm Jannica Morton.
Emily Francis.
And Stephen O's.
So today we have an exciting topic for a few different reasons. One of the reasons this topic is so exciting is because today we're actually going to go to visit Ascend, which is a location that we're looking to build a school at. Mm-hmm. So we're still in partnership conversations there.
It's very exciting and nerve-wracking.
So it's around self-directed learning. It's really about wanting to create and foster that whole concept in the lives of our children, obviously, because we incorporate self-directed learning. And what I loved when I talk about the subject, and the more I learn about the subject, is how much self-directed learning impacts us, like as adults. And I think it's really interesting when parents and adults say, well, how do you know your kids are going to learn? And yet the adult in their career has learned so much in a self-directed path.
Right.
And so really turning the conversation around and asking them, right? So actually we have here, Jonata Silva is right here with us on Facebook, and I know he's doing real estate investing, he's doing house flipping, and I think he's gone through the process of not only just investing in a house himself, like walk up, buy, but also setting up a team. And I bet you he would say that a lot of what he's learned is from a self-directed path. I wish we could get him on and talk about that. But if Jonatas, if you're still here with us, if you don't mind, like putting some comments there about how did you get into what you're doing in a sense? Were you only taking classes from people because you were told to do so, or were you directing the education of yourself, whether that's taking classes from your own initiative, reading, studying, or just figuring it out by networking with people? So I think this is a really, really fun topic. And what's really interesting about it is that how much it ties into Leonardo da Vinci, which is something we do on our Becoming Da Vinci show.
That's why we're excited about Ascend to Camp, because it is outdoors focused with 54 acres. So it's going to really help us support the kids in learning like Leonardo did, where he talks about how he learned everything from nature. So even all of his scientific inventions he learned from nature. We were so lucky to be able to walk up the hill where he learned and lived, and then down into the creek area that used to be a raging river at one point. In the 1400s, they created a dam, a stepped dam, and so he used to spend lots of time there, and that's where he came up with a lot of the ideas he has on his water control inventions and such. So to offer kids that type of opportunity and space is
Can we like digress for just a second and talk about that dam and the drawing? So in this codex,
drawing.
the damn drawings.
Damn drawings.
Yeah.
My Tandy always makes fun of me she always has this saying about focusing on the wrong syllable.
Oh yeah,
The wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable.
Yeah, that's what she does. And she goes, that's how I speak Spanish. I'm like, well, at least I try. But anyways, so this dam was in existence before, I think it was like 40 to 50 years before Leonardo da Vinci was even born and old enough to walk down there. And then he did a bunch of drawings. And I think to myself, how often do we go by things here every day? Right. We don't ever stop to just ponder at all. Like nothing. And he will actually have gone through everything he was walking by, because we saw, like you said, some of the paths that he was walking on, and the flowers that he drew, and he would stop and like, hold on, how's that?
And we stopped at one point. There was a rock wall, and there was these different ferns popping out of it, and there were little flowers and such. And Mateo, who was with us, who we met, who's a naturalist, and has studied Leonardo his whole life and grew up in Vinci, talked to us about how Leonardo drew each of these in his notebooks. and studied them and how he learned about light and how he learned about like plant life and how he learned like so many things from it. So that was so cool to be able to kind of experience a moment of something like the way Leonardo would learn.
Yeah. So going back here, Donatus actually did. He goes, yep, self-learning, lots of podcasts, books, seminars, and networking, picking people's brains. And so that is really the standard story of almost every entrepreneur I think I've interviewed. And I say almost just because I'm wondering if there was one person who said, no, I only have really kind of done it the structured way. I can't think of someone off the top of my mind who has. And that's how the vast majority of adults that I know got into whatever they're doing. And anything that's beyond just having a job, really. And so that's kind of like the whole point of this conversation today and the effort that we're working on, which is to bring a school together, which is not the first school of its kind, that's for sure. It's just a school that'll be one of the first in, I think, Dallas or Dallas proper, especially south of I-30, that's going to the market with this style, which is really cultivating that. It's kind of crazy, even for myself, to think of, and we've had a lot of conversations around what should be in the school and what should be left to the choice of the child. And it's really interesting as we're trying to figure out what that is, because we're all, you know, at least I would say for us, for myself, it is really around what is the best way that I can support, you know, my children in the next generation. And so, you know, does it have to be, do they have to learn how to read? Or is that something left for them? Do they need to learn mindfulness exercises up front, or we leave that for somebody else? And so just going through it.
Yeah. And I think we have some disagreements on that, but we think about it.
Mucho disagreements.
So Macarios that I co-founded was very much a child-led, like a vote in everything. The children have a vote in everything, or they did when we co-founded it.
So how many days a week did you guys have chicken nuggets for lunch?
No, because everyone brought their own food. And these kids were very conscious of what they ate. A lot of them were, because they came from crunchy families. But a lot of people can't wrap their mind around that. They feel like it's going to turn into anarchy. But what was so amazing to me was that as children create rules and work together to create a community, they own those rules and they own the consequences around that. And so there's so much, I don't know, misunderstanding of a self-directed learning environment and of a democratic environment. And I'm really loving seeing all the different options that are popping up around the country and around the world, showcasing these different levels of giving children, empowering children to make decisions, giving them some freedom, and setting parameters and scaffolding around that. Standards that are set by the children.
Again, so I think what I've been able to finally communicate is that I believe my whole points were always related to the culture that's being created. And corporate culture is so important. The culture of adults sitting in a room, right? It's so important. So thinking about that at the level of the child. So I've never really had conversations around anything related to academics, I don't think. Have I? Have I ever brought those up in our disagreement, in our lively conversations?
Sometimes.
Like which one?
You don't anymore, though, so I think I must have at some
think
point
I've
convinced you.
No, I don't think I've ever had academic conversation. I have had.
I don't know.
I have had cultural stuff that I think.
Well,
was
definitely
important.
lots of cultural.
So I think, you know, I'm 39 now. I know I look like I'm 20, but anyways, I'm working on a no wrinkle smile. Have I shown you? I was like, so that it doesn't wrinkle.
Stupid. No. He did that on half
That's
our
a hard
pictures in
live
Italy.
in 20.
Like, you look crazy.
Look at
Crazy
Steven,
man,
he's
like crazy eyes.
Yeah.
Hey, black don't crack. I know that, but you know, I'm trying to.
It
Keep
doesn't
looking
even
good.
matter. I'm just saying, like, you're gonna not win a lot with that smile.
No.
Donatus, how can you be involved? Yeah, man, reach out to me. What our whole purpose is and our goal is ultimately to create this into a system that can be used by other individuals or to help open up other schools. So we don't want to just open one school, although that is obviously our primary goal. But ultimately, everything that I do and anything that Jannica does, I believe, speaking for her, of course you can correct me, is that we're looking to create things that are scalable. So yeah, definitely reach out. This idea is really cool because it's a hybrid of self-directed and yet it also supports those that need a little bit more structure, or they want their parent that wants the child to have more structure. So a little bit more, if the child has a set curriculum that the parents definitely want to have covered, then they can use certain times throughout the day to focus on that, and then yet still be able to go back out to explore nature and be more involved with the kids instead of just sitting there all day long listening to someone teach to them. So my points were a lot around culture. So for example, I was saying I'm 39 years old, and I'm sometimes just recently, meaning in the last 5 years, 6 years, 2 years, learning about mindfulness things and learning about things related to how we can approach removing our egos so much, which is something that is really important in childhood development. But then as adults, it's really amazing if we can start taking those things down and then reconnecting with everybody else. Learning how to communicate better, all those type of things I thought would be really great to bring in at a younger age, instead of now a bunch of 25-year-olds, 30-year-olds going around, getting together in circles and crying, and just learning how to have some of these techniques to apply to their life. So some of these things have been accepted because Jannica's finally seen the wisdom in my genius, and some that she's still not agreeing to.
No, a lot of it I didn't agree to.
Like the vast majority.
He wanted to bring in Stoicism to the school, which does not really go in alignment with a lot of the other pieces. So that was an interesting conversation.
So we're not going to get into that.
No, we're not going to get into that.
It doesn't go with alignment because children should pick their worldviews and philosophies after they've experimented with learning a bunch of stuff.
I agree with that, yes.
To me, Stoicism is the difference. It's all around knowing the difference between what I can control and what I cannot control.
Yeah, but those are the things that you find through experience.
Most people have not learned enough.
I know, but
a
it's
lot.
still
So why not establish that as, hey, little Timmy said that you're ugly. Is that something that you can control, or is that something you can?
Okay, well, listen to this definition of Stoicism. The endurance of pain or hardship without the display of feelings and without complaint. I don't want to teach my children that.
That's being stoic. That is not stoicism. Those are two totally different things.
Nope. Stoicism. That is what I looked up. I did not look up being stoic.
That is not what it is.
Well, then why is the definition wrong?
Thank you. Let's go back.
Huh?
It says self-directed learning in a nutshell.
Exactly. She has self-directed the wrong way.
No,
I have actually taken a class on it.
I have too. I have a humanities honors degree.
Humanities
An
honors?
AA in humanities, and it was an honors
What's
program.
an AA here?
An Associates of Arts degree.
Oh, okay.
Either way, both things are subjective, so it doesn't matter.
You can both be right or wrong.
And that's a matter of time.
That's coffee. Okay, whatever. Anyways, so I actually do agree with a lot of your culture pieces. I just think that there are ways to integrate it where it's not a rule. So.
Oh my God, that's the nicest thing she's ever. Mark it, 10/13, May the 16th, 2019, the first time she ever said something nice to me.
That's
Oh
not
my
true.
God. Anyways, so Emily, you found a podcast yesterday, and did you get a chance to listen to it?
No.
Can you make up what you think?
You think it missed?
Would have been in there?
What I'll do is I'll post it, and then
Maybe we talk about it
can
later,
have a
huh?
group chat. Because now I'm not going to lie about what I didn't listen to.
So the subject was the fallacy, or is self-directed learning? What's the title of it? Yeah, let's go and post that thing right
Yeah,
here.
I didn't get to listen to it yet, but I did bookmark it to listen to it. I just haven't had a chance.
I have
Okay.
to hurry up and get home so I could go to a gas station and buy a present.
Well,
Thanks,
had you not
Racetrack.
delivered presents, sadness could have happened, and then the Stoic lessons would have kicked in. So Stephen is a big self-directed learner, huge self-directed learner.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would agree.
I mean, I don't ever stop learning, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
Don't stop, never stop.
But you went through a traditional school, right?
Yeah, I went through traditional school.
Traditional, like public K through 12?
Yeah,
Okay.
And-
So I think it's interesting because I did also.
right.
You did not, right?
Did not.
You didn't
Did
go
not.
through a K through 12?
I did, a private K through 12.
Yeah.
That's a little bit different, but okay. And how about
I
you?
went their
exactly,
normal
no.
school?
No, how is it not?
Yeah,
the
how-
same?
Well, it is private, so they can change things versus state mandated
Just public
everything.
Oh,
No,
no. It was
no,
the
no.
Seventh-day Adventist school. There's no changing since it was first thought of 3,000 years ago or 200 years ago or whatever.
And they all have to comply with state laws. It's the same.
Okay, so in that sense, we have 3 grad. I don't. What's your story?
Public school, but first kinder through second was in Germany, so it wasn't your kind of
Typical
ones.
American.
It was for military kids.
Did you learn to duck walk?
Why would I do that?
I was just asking. Okay, so
You
And
wanna
then
know
in
how
California,
you-
it was a
you
really
wanna
progressive
know how
school
to
in
get,
Monterey. So
grab real quick in Germany.
how was that? Do that?
Any of that.
Yes, I know. Yet
Yeah.
their freedom of speech extends to a point, and then it's
Yeah.
like,
the
nope.
point is where the last time we let people
We
talk
were
about
asked-
being Nazis, it went bad.
Yeah.
What was fun? What's crazy is a few times in my history related to that censorship stuff was related to our tobacco brand, Social Smoke, because the symbol of Social Smoke is 2 interlocking S's,
Gotcha.
right? And they're like, well, the SS. I'm like, get out of here, man! What are you talking about? That's the Waffen SS. Is totally different
Right.
than. But anyways,
But yeah, I mean, and I think honestly, it's very German, and that's one of the reasons why they excel at a lot of things related to precision.
oh my
To-
God, they are precise.
To basically say, okay, we have litigated this thing through entire World War. We don't need to readdress this. That was bad. End of story. You come up with a new idea of why you think you might want to revisit it. We just slap you in the face and say,
Get in.
That was a problem.
Right. So we're all products of basically a very, very structured public school system, in her case private, but still very structured.
Right.
So here we are talking about,
I went to a really progressive school in Monterey because it was Monterey, so it's basically private school for elementary. And then it was in honors classes and stuff, so it really wasn't, I think, the same experience that kids are having now in the same environment.
okay, so the 3 of us went through that, and then Emily went through some hybrid.
Yeah.
And yet here we are talking about how we think the best route. So we're all marginally successful individuals. And here we are talking about how we think that's probably not the best route. So the way we were educated
Right.
or not educated may not have been the best for us, even though we have, in all intents and purposes, can say we've done pretty well for ourselves.
Right.
So how do we balance this stuff, right? Because I think that's a lot of the conversations that happen. It's like, well, yeah, but you guys actually went through the public school system. How is it bad? How was it bad?
Okay, well, I can say I did go to public school for 3 whole weeks in 3rd grade. Absolutely was blown away. I mean, the Christian private school I was at, well, let me take a step back. I started in Montessori for 2 years. And I remember so much of the learning involved in that from when I was 4 and 5, way more than I remember things from that. Then went into the private Christian school where it was very structured, very rigid, a lot of rules, a lot of requirements, along with everything you have to learn from an education standpoint. You have the religious side too. And then going to public school for 3 weeks. Number one, I was bored beyond anything I can explain to you. I came home in tears, frustrated with how bored I was. And frustrated because also even though everything was so rigid at the Christian school, there was some creativity involved. There was time to be a little bit of an individual within it. Like we had different moments where, and I don't remember what they were called, but where you could do your work and read or whatever. Like there was some free time within the day. And at the public school, that was not a thing. It was so, I don't know. I felt like I was in jail. And one of my absolute happiest days is when I was told we were moving. And I was not gonna have to go back. And I
Wow.
remember that. So,
So go to Stephen here. What are your thoughts back on your schooling, and then really how you've learned everything since that you're actively involved in?
I mean, my biggest takeaway from middle school, high school, and even in college, probably less in college because college, is flexible to a point. There's a little bit of college understanding that you as the student are also their customer. But for middle school and high school, my biggest takeaway was that most of the school structure is in place for non-academic reasons. So no one, from my experience, cared what I was learning or how fast I was learning it or what I could accomplish with that. They just cared as long as I crossed T's, checked I's, dotted, whatever, made their life
Hit
easier.
certain benchmarks that had to be met or whatever.
I wouldn't even say it was the benchmarks. It was more of the, like, okay, you're performing inside of this model what we think a quote-unquote good child is, so therefore that's okay. And two of the biggest activities that got me in trouble all the time was that as someone that was a voracious reader and really got bored with how fast the lessons progressed because it had to be taught to everyone, I would read other material during class.
Yep.
Like, I was suspended over 150 times for reading in class and not paying
How
attention
dare
to
you
the
read
teacher.
in this
Yeah, and
place?
your grades were great, I'm sure.
And my grades, like, even when they fluctuated, it was in the moment when the teacher decided to test my knowledge of whatever subject they were talking about at the moment, they would say, stop reading, you're not paying attention, what are we talking about? And I'd be like, we're talking about this because it's on page X, Y, Z, and this is how it relates to the end of the thing, and when the hell are you gonna get to the homework?
Yep.
I think
That sounds
overall,
about right.
we have seen in the last, obviously maybe the last 100 years, really an attack on structures that hold people into certain boxes, into
Right.
certain constraints. And I think this is now one of, a new area to have conversations on, is that in this case, you not paying attention doesn't mean you're not learning. It just doesn't mean you may not be paying attention to her at the moment. Yet if she's covering what you already know, or you covering what you actually don't care at all about anyways,
Right.
right? And really, why force it down your throat, and what is the benefit of it?
Well, that is unfortunately most of the problem in the current. So we have an interesting combination of problems. We don't value teaching
Right.
enough as a profession. To
One might
pay
call it a
people-
clusterfuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, we don't pay
The
people-
scientific term is clusterfuck.
Yeah, we don't pay people near enough to actually
From the Latin clusterfuckus.
invest.
Clusterfuckus. I don't know if
There's
that.
a great Eddie Izzard.
I love
Bit on
Eddie
Latin.
Izzard.
So we don't pay teachers enough to care about actually teaching specifically, and then on the other side we don't have systems in place to support teachers that will push the envelope
Right.
and actually teach. So the issue you get into is, like, a teacher cannot assess a student's level of progress and connect it to a why because they do not also understand. No math teacher that I ever met could explain to me why the Pythagorean theorem was ever useful for my life. To this day, to this day, even involving like work on artificial intelligence, I have yet to use that damn formula.
To be perfectly honest, I don't remember when you're supposed to use it or might need
It's
it.
a-
I just remember what it
It's
is. I
just the
just
general
don't
concept.
remember.
It's a
But like
concept, yeah.
practical math, like the things that I need to figure out which formulas combine together to make an explosive, like those things.
Don't talk about explosives with me. I'm from Iran.
Look,
U.S. is pissed with Iran right now. I'm not spending my time in Gitmo because you're trying to use some fucking examples.
all I'm saying is there's a lot of practical stuff, launching rockets, doing whatever you
No.
want to do. Like, there are things that
I don't even,
cannot.
how you spell rocket? I don't even know what that is.
There are things
God,
that,
I have a whole story about that and the naval, the CIS, what is it called? Naval Criminal Investigative Services.
oh yeah.
I had a whole story about that also involves the CIA. If you guys ever want to know, I'll be happy to tell you.
But yeah, basically, there are practical applications of math that most people don't care about because they're stuck in this formula that they're supposed to teach. And then if a kid gets it, you're not allowed to move on. Like, you have to go through the slog of doing it over and over again because that's what the curriculum says. And then you ask the teacher, okay, like, where does this actually apply? And they can't even give you a basic, like, well,
Well, if you grew up to be a math teacher in middle school, it's really
yeah.
helpful.
So really
Oh.
what school is for is the transfer of information to you, period.
mm-hmm.
It's not for how do you assimilate the information to do what is the only valuable thing humans can do right now, which is solve some problems.
So solve some problem. But
Solve a
it's-
problem,
But
right?
it's not so much even that it's just designed for transfer of information. It is designed for transfer of information, but it does not employ people that can then, they can accurately connect that transfer to a result.
But there's no need for doing that in school. They don't even budget the time for it.
Right.
Because if you really say, said kid from the age of 5 to 18 must learn everything that's in Wikipedia, there's just no time.
Right.
You have to cut out recess, you have to shorten lunches, you have to cut out socialization, and you just cram it together and you just start going through all the material, thinking that the knowledge base allows them to build off. And it's like giving someone 100 million bricks, but if you don't actually know how to use the bricks to build a wall, to build something that then becomes earthquake resistant, to know how to build an arch, do you know how to build a bridge? What is the point of all the bricks? And that's really what happens. They have all the knowledge, but humans don't retain knowledge very well.
No.
Right?
Humans tend to learn things as they are necessary.
Yes, exactly what I was getting to. So,
And when they
ultimately-
find it relevant, so it's
Yeah.
when their curiosity is piqued.
That's right.
Right.
So that's just the way we are, like as adults. I mean, the things that I have dived into, people try to put me in a pigeonhole me in a box, like, oh, because you're an engineer, or because, which means I was an engineer officially between the ages of 21 and 25, which that was 14 years ago now, right? Because you're an engineer or because you're analytical, you're good at this. Like, what are you talking about? I've actually spent so much time. I think if I was in school, I would already have another bachelor's in something related to psychology or something of that nature, because I've spent so much time reading on that on my own.
Right.
And understanding, why I do the things that I do, and really trying to figure out what the fuck Emily's doing and why she's doing what she's doing. Like, there's whole teams of scientists
It would
needed
take
for
me
that
too
one.
long to explain it to you.
Here we go, 5 seconds, go for it. No, really, honestly, it's, and it's because those are the things that have piqued my interest, and I really dived into them, and I'm learning.
Right.
Versus, hey, you have to learn, you can only learn from these people in these structured environments, and everything outside of that doesn't count. It's just not the case. And you know why I know it's not the case?
What?
Why do you think?
I don't know. You were going to tell me. That requires me thinking.
I'm
Right
trying
now,
to
I'm
plug the Da
distracted.
Vinci show, so you have it. Is it really Leonardo da Vinci?
What was your question?
How do I know, what do you think I know that self-directed learning is a model that is really successful versus the model of just going through a normal school system?
Leonardo da Vinci. Because it's proven with him. What are you doing?
So Leonardo da Vinci and pretty much every epic person that you can ever imagine has a story in which what they did and what they became famous for is completely opposite of what they went through schooling for. 100%.
Well, Leonardo didn't go to school.
Whoa, tell us about that.
I did already. He learned in the yard. He learned outside. He learned by whatever piqued his curiosity. But for him, he talks about how everything he learned stemmed from nature, and that anything that is worth learning is only worth learning if it goes along with something that you're interested in. Otherwise, there's no value in learning it because you're not going to be able to really apply it or see it or use it. So it's just a data point stuck in your head that you can't do anything with, and what's the point?
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, Jack Fresco, we've done a segment on him. Of course, Leonardo da Vinci. I was watching TV the other day, and a documentary on kind of like physics of the great minds, and covered this one individual, and I don't have his name right in front of me right now, but he's really much like the father of thermodynamics.
Oh yeah.
Completely self-taught, just pondered and pondered and pondered and thought of. I think it was Austrian, I think.
Yes. Oh, I have it in our list.
Fibonacci, you can just go down the list of these individuals, and they were super smart, and they really did so much of that stuff on their own, and they just really were passionate about it. So self-directed learning does not mean you do not go to classes. That does not mean you don't read books. That does not mean you don't go through even multi-year certifications. It just means that you get to do you get to explore subjects that you're really interested in. And that's a conversation, because in this school, it's not about the kids just coming and doing whatever they want all the time. Because if they sign up and they say, look, we want to have a class on photography, then the class can be arranged with a professional photographer that can teach them. But it's not to come in and say, well, the future is around visual, which in a lot of ways you could say, visual has become a big part of business. So now everybody needs to learn about visual and visual arts and graphic design and Photoshop and so forth. So one of the questions here is, what are your take on homeschooling? We're thinking of doing that with my son. This is Jonatas again from Houston, and we're putting him in a Montessori school. So would you like to
So I homeschooled my kids from 2009 through, well, now. How old is your son?
Jannica's son, I think, is 4, 5.
Awesome. So for me, I would suggest Montessori, like over homeschooling for that age group. I really, really, really love what Maria Montessori created for ages 3 to 6. I think it is such a valuable foundation. And yes, you can do that at home, and you can model what she did and teach in other ways, such as unschooling, or Waldorf has some similarities. But I think homeschooling at that age really is more about unschooling. Whereas if you're going to put them in a school, then do Montessori.
Yeah.
Emily, can you drop in a link to Free to Learn?
Yeah.
So actually, I can do it here because I just had it pulled up.
Because you're not running audio.
There's actually, it's interesting.
What?
So
Because you're not running
a
audio.
lot of what self-directed
Rude.
learning is termed for, children. Once you get out of college, they call
That's
that
just
career
called being a
development.
grown-up
Yes.
person.
Yes,
Exactly.
exactly.
Yeah.
Good job.
And so a lot of people are like, well, what's this weird, self-directed learning thing? It's like, well, you know how when you graduated from college and you're like, oh crap, how do I adult?
You know when Windows
Yes.
10 rolled out and you had to figure out how to use it? Guess what you were doing?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, everything is. You get a new
Exactly.
coffee maker. You either
Yeah.
read the manual, look up YouTube videos, or play with it.
You call your grandkids, and the next time they come visit, they come teach you how to put email
But
on your
everything's
tablet.
like that.
Right, and the other half of this is a lot of people don't realize it's also survival. So
Yeah.
nothing's getting cheaper, everything's getting more expensive. But the ability to earn through traditional methods that someone allows you to earn
Yeah.
is becoming harder and harder. So really, there's going to become, if things continue in the trend that is continuing, which I don't believe it actually will, but like if they do, there's going to become a have and have-nots. Back to when college first was instituted, and people that were fortunate got to go to college. Everybody else went through their basics, sixth or eighth grade, and then that was it.
Right.
So then you differentiated yourself and gave yourself more ability to earn by going to college and learning additional skills, if you could. Self-directed learning is the thing that like President Garfield did because he didn't go to any of the formalized education, and so he taught himself a bunch of stuff and then became a president. So it's like,
Yeah.
in the future, a lot of people are going to be like, well, how do I like put food on the table? Oh, this is a basic survival skill. I should learn how to do something that makes money. Oh, let me teach myself
Blah, blah,
something.
blah. So we watched, yesterday was Evan's 16th birthday, and we stayed home and I know, and played, which is what we do on birthdays. And he wanted to watch Good Will Hunting. And I hadn't seen it in 22 years, like since it came out. Oh my God, totally, so many things in that movie reminded me of why I loved self-directed learning. And why one of the reasons I was so happy about Montessori when the kids were little. Because looking at him, I can't even think of his character's name now, Will.
Will Hunting?
Will Hunting, was that his name? Okay, he's a genius, obviously, which you don't need to be
To be in our show, obviously.
to be a self-directed learner. So many people think that only the smart kids can be self-directed learners, can be successful in an unschooling environment, which is absolute bullcrap, because
Well,
you
also-
don't need to be.
Well, also because of the fact that the way that a lot of people determine what is smart or not is how well do you follow someone else's instruction, which
Yeah.
is actually pretty stupid.
Which is stupid, because you look at those kids whom are labeled a lot of times in school as the disruptive child, the bad child, the not smart child, and when you sit down and really ask them questions about things that interest them, you're blown away. We have a really good example of a kid that practically lives at our house, had no clue, like he and Evan like to smoke a lot of pot, and I've known him for years and love him to pieces, and I know he's smart, but he just doesn't care.
Right.
Found out he like knows quantum physics at levels that I'm blown away, like studying with him and talking to him and having these conversations. And like,
And he probably picked it up very young because that was me in 8th grade.
yes, it interested him.
Like,
He
the things I got suspended for was reading like 4th dimensional physics and how it related to like string theory.
yeah.
Fine.
How dare you?
But here's the thing, in other areas he's not so great at. He
Right.
doesn't care, or he doesn't have that skill set.
So the question then is not, that's a different, so there's two parts to this.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk, Jananis I think is offline, so never mind. So the end of the question is, if he was in a structured school environment, would he be better in those things that you just said he sucks at?
Possibly, maybe.
If he was in, or
If he was.
he is in. He's in a public high school.
Oh, there you go. Okay, good.
When he was homeschooled up until high school, he didn't want to do the work. He was in a structured homeschool curriculum program.
Right, and that's what I wanted to talk to Donatus about, which
Yeah.
we need to make it clear that homeschool and school is the same, can be the
It
same.
can be the same. And
Can be
that's-
literally
yes,
just the same minus the fact that there's more kids around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he was in a program called Classical
Oh,
Conversation.
he's there, Donatus. All right, he's on, he's back. So let's talk about that. You asked about homeschooling, Donatus. And I used to think the same way you did until I read that book by Peter Gray, I want to say 5 years ago or so. He's super awesome. The book is paradigm shifting, at least it was for
Yeah.
myself. And I think it has been for a lot of people, because a lot of people reference that book as really what got them thinking about self-directed education and unschooling and so forth. But the whole concept is this, that if you just have a curriculum that you do at home, it's really kind of the same thing that's outbound. So if your son does not want to learn math today and you say like, sorry, this is what you're going to do today, it really is driving home exactly the whole point of this conversation is it's not what he's interested in. He won't really absorb it. He may absorb none of it and might come to resent it. And instead, he may want to do other things. And boys in particular are known to pick up reading, for example, later. I think about 9 years old, 7 to 9.
No, 9 to 12 are for
9 to
boys.
12
7
is
to 9 is
where-
girls.
Really?
Yeah.
Boys developmentally, on average.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know it was that.
Yeah, it's about
Yeah.
that late, right?
Yeah.
So if you're sitting there
Anybody I
enforcing
know
a
who that would
5-year-old to
apply
learn,
Miles read as a young kid too.
All
so
three of
that's
my
so
boys.
weird.
Well, no, 2 of my boys.
It's not weird. It's not weird. It's just my experience would have led me to think that was not the case.
Yeah.
Based on
Yeah.
everyone I know was a young reader.
Yeah.
right?
That could just be the people I end up hanging out with.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
And so I think that's really important is that if you are having a homeschooling curriculum, then how much are you balancing his ability to explore and be free and socialize with other kids? Because the other part of the homeschooling thing, the unschooling thing that I got out of reading the book was that older kids and younger kids, like we shouldn't be really separating kids by literally a number age, right? Like if you're born from September through whatever, then you can be in a group, but then if you were born 1 month before or 1 month after, you're cut off and you can't be in that group. But it's kind of ridiculous. And so what ends up happening is that if you're able to blend the ages together, the older kids can teach the younger kids, and they adapt their personalities.
Younger kids can teach the older kids,
I was
which
gonna get
happens a
there.
lot.
And then they adapt their personalities to support each other. So actually, right now, while I was on the stream, I got a picture of my son who's sitting at the countertop eating, and he's 15 months old. And the reason he's doing that is because he gets to model after his brother, who is older, obviously. His brother's almost 5. And so he gets to model after him. And I've seen Issa even change how he behaves, between playing with the 13-year-old and playing with the 1-year-old. And so these are things that happen inside of my own house. And these things happen in a self-directed learning
Yeah.
school or unschooling school, which is really, really fascinating. So these are completely foreign concepts to me up to a few years ago, honestly, because I grew up with the typical Middle Eastern family concept, which is you fail at in 89. Like that's like starting to become failure. By 87, you're a failure, period. You've insulted the family, like you got to have A's.
Oh, gotcha.
My family's way better at that than a lot of other ones. But I know a lot of Middle Eastern families, Asian families, like there's 3 professions you're going to and that's it. Otherwise, you're just completely a clusterfuck. So either you're a doctor, you're an engineer, or you're an attorney, and that's it.
Right.
God forbid you ever say something about wanting to be a musician or an artist or.
And a lot of people don't teach, yet again, not connecting the why, the methodology behind that. For most non-privileged, I would say privileged in the case of like having access to like resources and backup support, stable home environment living, everything else, it's really detrimental for you to focus on something that has a very minimal payoff, like direction-wise. So, it's the same thing like for Middle Eastern families, for Indian families, for Black families. Everyone's like, these are the 3 things you're going to do. Like, it's going to be some licensed profession skill, lawyer, doctor, something,
Right.
something that's tangible that has a pretty solid career path. Because doing something like liberal arts is only something you can afford when your fallback is money.
Well,
Like,
you mean that's the thought or that's the truth?
No, for the most part, that's the truth, but also that's the thought process that is part of the culture, right?
So because at that point, like, you can't afford to bribe people to make sure your family gets home from work or school safe and all
you
that
may
other
not
stuff.
qualify for the loans necessary to float you until you find some of the work that then builds your career. Like, I mean, a lot of, like, if you look at, like, artists and actors and that kind of stuff, you go through a whole bunch of really terrible financial times before some of that stuff hits. And it's only a few of the really, like, successful people that do go on to become, like, massive national household names. Everybody else kind of just hits in that middle ground. So, like, for my example, I was able to do broadcast in college because I knew that at the end of the day, I could always go back and do remodeling homes and flipping houses.
Right.
That was just a baked in knowledge that I had. Like, I can always make $100K a year because of the fact that I have, like, this set skill that was already there before I went to school. So I can make a completely different decision than someone that's like, none of my family has any money. I am the only person that's going to school in the first place, and I need to do something that is going to put tangible dollars in my pocket.
So these are really difficult conversations because there are a lot of very successful artists, obviously.
Yeah.
So go back to Iran, and a lot of the really amazing artists and poems and poets, Hafiz, Rumi, like these are Omar Khayyam, they are like super famous people. Right? But it's like, what? They're super famous, but we don't want you to emulate them. I don't know if that would be something, right?
Yeah,
so maybe are you saying that people are looking at the bell curves and saying, look, here's the bell curve of how, artists that make money, engineers that make money.
Right.
So even if you're just a standard normal engineer, look at where the number is, you're going to be better off. And it's true. When I left school at 21 years old, my first job that year, I made $55,000 plus benefits.
Right.
So I mean, that's crazy money for a 21-year-old. I was always like, this is just insane amount of money, right? Versus a business student that would have left college at the same time, their pay is like 30 grand. I made 50 grand. Right? Huge difference. But the difference was in the engineering path, you do have growth and you do have growth potential, but the business student, because of the type of business, right? They can just exponentially grow because they're in a whole different line versus the engineering. If you're clocking in and clocking out as an engineer, your path is kind of really set. And yes, you can get into the six-figure numbers as an engineer in your 40s and 50s.
Right.
But it's very, very set. It's not an idea like, yeah, and I closed that deal and then I got onto this team and now I lead this and now boom.
Right.
Now I just made 800 grand last year. Like, nope, not possible.
Right.
But yes, I can understand. If you're looking at bell curves, there are some professions that pay more, some professions that pay less, and that's just what it is.
Yeah.
I would imagine,
and I would say it's not. I would say mostly it's generated by the fact that parents want to do the best for their children, and so, like, if your kid is the one kid that's unsuccessful at whatever their dream was, and you didn't tell them, like, hey, this was a possibility.
But but this is the conversation we have a lot. So you're saying parents, want that, right? I think the only thing that, well, not the only, I think a really important thing to translate to anybody who's wanting to improve their state, and obviously kids fall into that group because they are trying to improve their state even if they don't realize it, is habits and the culture of the kid. I don't know any other way, right? Like you said, I can flip houses. You cannot flip houses if you're not willing to go work hard to go flip the house. It's a lots of work. Whether even if you have all the money. I mean, Jonatas is right here. He's told me stories about how you have to go find the house. I mean, there's a lot of work. So work ethic to me is important to teach and cultivate. Flipping house, no flipping house, whatever. Because if you have work ethic, you can do anything.
So a lazy engineer will get fired the same way that a lazy artist will not have their art paid for. So
So that's where we have a conversations on. It's like, what are the traits that could be useful to help make sure they have, so when they get out, they can be successful.
A lot of it is just like being honest about the information itself, right? Like, I don't feel that people should be correcting as much toward one bias or the other. So, like, for instance, going back to the minority family thing, I don't think correcting toward the licensed professions, as hard as happens, is the right call, because they do that and then discourage everything else by attacking the arts and the liberal arts professions and everything else, And it's like, no, if you teach, like going back to what you said, if you teach your kids work ethic, skills, and the ability to, like the skill of actually learning something and sticking to something and actually executing and accomplishing, they might choose to be an engineer, they might choose to be an artist, but that work ethic core competency piece will just go to whatever job they do.
I wouldn't say all of those careers, you know, medical, engineering, things like that. Those are all things that have a specific amount of things you must memorize. You must know them, black as white,
Yeah,
black and white.
totally.
So you can have your entire family like studying with you and on your butt because it's not intangible. There's no question of, oh, did you understand this concept? Okay, well, did you pass this test? Okay, yes or no.
Right.
So there's just
It's easier for me to wrap your head around.
yeah.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
Plus, I
So-
mean, from an art standpoint, you know, a lot of artists, unfortunately, are not appreciated in their time. So even if you're the best poet, I mean, even the ones you listed,
Yeah.
were they famous while they were alive?
It's a
Maybe?
very rare, it's a very rare combination of an artist that is famous while they're alive and recognized for their work, and then also continues to become, you know, more revered after.
So speaking of like super
Yeah.
famous artists that's epic and should be acknowledged, we have Warren Carlyle the fourth tuning in. He's epic. He's an
He
epic
is.
artist.
Hello, Warren.
Artist in his own way. So, and he's getting a lot of good recognition and success. Recently at Facebook, like Facebook. He's pretty famous. Was up on the big jumbotron basically at the conference they had for community builders. So cool stuff. Well, this is the conversation we constantly have, going back to, you know, what should be taught and what doesn't have to be taught, and this is something that we're constantly talking about, Jannica and I. You know, going back to the Stoicism thing, is that something taught or not taught? Is mindfulness taught, not yoga? Not, you know, just trying to figure these things out. So on that, we're going to actually cut off here a little bit early because we are going to get to go to that facility and have conversations there, and hopefully we can keep on moving this ball
Yeah.
forward.
So we didn't even get to cover like all the million questions that East Platinum gave us in
Can you give
Twitch
me one
that
of
I've
them?
been messaging him about.
And if not, then we can actually follow up tomorrow.
I think
or
we
day
should.
after.
He has a lot of
this
comments.
is a good.
Is it good?
Yeah.
I mean, it ties to the wealth wheel. Learning is
Yep.
a
Enrichment.
tremendous part of that. So.
Okay, cool. So we'll continue on this conversation, I think maybe tomorrow, if that's okay with everybody. So Emily, can you please make sure we grab some of these questions that we have on Twitch, and we'll make sure to kind of start there tomorrow and also give an update on what happened today.
Yep.
Awesome.
Good.
So thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks a lot for questions, your comments. I'm gonna have a call with Jason Croft about Windows. We need to teach him about Windows. And Janata, reach out whenever you're ready and we'll talk some more. Definitely check out that book though if you haven't. Dr. Peter Gray, click on that link. Super epic book, easy read, share it with your wife. I think it's amazing. And there's a lot of other resources we can share with you. I think it's a really amazing path to go down, especially anybody who's entrepreneurial. I think these are some easy concepts because entrepreneurs are all about freedom and exploring and learning things on their own and then applying it to obviously create a business and to change the world. So super awesome stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. Ready? All right, it's Abe Nadimi.
Jannica Morton.
Emily Francis.
Steven Evans. Yeah.
Bye.
Hey, I have a question.